The man in the smoke, the flames were already licking the curtains when she opened her eyes. Sophie gasped, choking on thick black smoke as it filled her lungs. She tried to sit up, but the heat pushed her back down. Her apartment was on fire. The crackling sound of burning wood and the popping of glass filled her ears. She coughed, disoriented, sweat pouring down her back. Her bedroom door was already engulfed in flames. She screamed, but her voice felt lost in the roaring chaos. Then, through the smoke, a shadow moved. A tall figure appeared at her window from the 3rd floor. Sophie's heart stuttered. Was she hallucinating? The man didn't hesitate. He punched the window with something metallic, breaking it open in a single blow. The glass shattered with a sharp crash. She screamed again, but this time in shock. "Don't move!" the man shouted. His voice was calm but commanding. "Cover your face." Without waiting for permission, he climbed in. Sophie backed away, terrified. Who was this man? Before she could speak, he wrapped a wet cloth around her nose and mouth and pulled her into his arms. She struggled for a second, then surrendered. The room was collapsing. If she stayed, she'd die. They moved fast. He knew the layout better than she did. He guided her through the smoke-filled hallway, past burning picture frames, and through the kitchen. He kicked the back door open. The heat was unbearable. Sophie's skin burned even without touching the fire. Her lungs felt like they were collapsing. Then, suddenly, fresh air. The cold night hit her like a slap. They stumbled into the alley behind the building, collapsing onto the concrete. Sophie coughed violently, the taste of smoke still in her throat. She looked up at her rescuer. His face was partly covered with ash. His clothes were torn. His eyes, dark and unreadable, scanned her quickly to make sure she was conscious. Then, just as quickly as he came, he stood up and ran. "Wait," she called out, breathless, but he didn't stop. He disappeared into the darkness, like a shadow melting into night. The next few hours were a blur. Firefighters arrived. Neighbors gathered. Sophie was checked by paramedics, wrapped in blankets, given water. She was told the fire started in the apartment below hers. Faulty wiring. It spread fast. She kept asking about the man who saved her, but no one had seen him. There was no footage from the alley camera, malfunctioned. They said no one reported a stranger entering the building. The firemen swore they didn't find anyone else inside. He was a ghost. 2 days later, Sophie sat on the edge of a borrowed bed in her cousin's guest room, staring at the news coverage on her phone. "Woman survives deadly apartment fire. Mysterious rescuer vanishes." The headline read. They called him the Smoke Man online. Some were calling her story fake. Others claimed it was a hallucination. She knew it. WASN, single quotes T. He was real. She'd felt his arms, seen his face, even if only for a moment. She scrolled through messages on social media. Nothing. No one had come forward. She opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was the only thing left from her apartment, a scorched gold bracelet her mother had given her, and beneath it, something she hadn't noticed before, a matchbox. It wasn't hers. She picked it up. On the cover was a logo, a small bar in another part of the city. Burnt into the back were 3 numbers, 317. Her hands shook. Had he dropped? This was this clue. The next evening Sophie stood outside the bar. It was a rough-looking place, dim lights, heavy music, people smoking outside. She hesitated. Every part of her said to turn back, but the memory of that night haunted her. She needed answers. She walked in. The air smelled like alcohol and old wood. A bartender gave her a quick glance but didn't say anything. She made her way to the back, to a booth marked 317 carved into the wood. She waited. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, a man sat down across from her. He wore a dark hoodie. His face was in shadows, but Sophie recognized the eyes. "You're him," she whispered. He didn't speak. "Why did you save me?" He looked down, then said quietly, "Because someone once saved me." "Who are you?" she asked, voice shaking. He leaned forward slightly. "You're not ready to know that." Before she could reply, he stood up again and disappeared through the back door. Sophie sat frozen. Why was he hiding? What was he afraid of? Who was he really? The bar that held secrets. Sophie couldn't sleep that night. The man's eyes haunted her, the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, like he knew her, or had once known someone like her. His words kept echoing in her mind. "You're not ready to know that." What wasn't she ready to know? Why was he hiding? And why choose to save her? She stared at the matchbox again. It still smelled faintly of smoke, a reminder of the night that almost killed her, and the man who risked his life to save hers. It wasn't just about gratitude anymore. It was about truth. Whoever he was, he didn't just appear by accident. She was sure of it now. The next morning, Sophie returned to the bar. This time in daylight, it looked less dangerous, almost empty. A few stools were occupied, and a single bartender stood behind the counter cleaning glasses. Sophie approached him slowly. "Hi," she said softly. The bartender looked up. He was in his 50s, with tired eyes and a cigarette tucked behind one ear. "Can I help you?" he asked. Not unkindly. "I came here last night. I sat in booth 317. A man joined me. Tall, dark hoodie, quiet. Do you know him?" The bartender paused, giving her a long, measured look. "We don't ask names here," he said, drying a glass. "But I know who you mean." Sophie's breath caught. "You do," he sighed. "You're not the first person looking for him." She frowned. "What do you mean?" The bartender hesitated. "He's been coming here for months. Same booth, same time. Doesn't talk to anyone. Sometimes just sits there for hours, then disappears." "Do you know anything else about him?" she pressed. "Anything at all?" The bartender leaned in slightly. "He pays with cash. Drives an old black motorcycle. No plates. Always wears gloves, like he doesn't want to leave fingerprints. And once, when I was closing up, I saw him cleaning blood off his arm in the bathroom sink." Sophie's eyes widened. "Blood?" The bartender nodded. Didn't look hurt, though, calm as stone. "I didn't ask. Did he ever mention a name?" she asked desperately. "Not his own," the bartender said. "But I heard him whisper something once. Sounded like Elias. That mean anything to you?" Sophie shook her head slowly, but it stuck in her mind. Elias. Sophie left the bar with her heart pounding. She felt like she was stepping into someone else's story, a darker, more dangerous one. Back at her cousin's apartment, she began to search. She typed Elias, motorcycle, bar fire, man saves woman, into every search engine she could find. Nothing useful. Then, just as she was about to give up, something appeared. A local news article from 2 years ago. Headline: "Man saves child from burning car. Disappears before authorities arrive." It wasn't the same story, but the pattern was familiar. No name, no photo. The man had broken the car window, pulled the child out, then vanished before emergency services arrived. Witnesses described him as tall, dark clothes, gloves, possibly a biker. Sophie's pulse raced. Was it the same man? She dug deeper. A few more stories, different cities, different victims, same description. Each time, he saved someone from fire or danger, then disappeared. Who was this man? And why did he only show up in moments of disaster? That night, Sophie returned to the bar again. She sat in booth 317. She waited. The hours passed. She sipped water, barely touching it. Her phone buzzed with messages from her cousin, but she ignored them. Then finally, the door creaked open. He entered like a shadow, moving silently through the nearly empty bar. This time, Sophie didn't wait for him to come to her. She stood and blocked his path. "You owe me an explanation," she said firmly. He stopped. His hoodie was up again, face mostly hidden, but she could still see his jaw tighten. "Be here," he said lowly. "I have questions. You saved me, then vanished. Why? Who are you?" He looked past her, as if checking the exits. She didn't move. Then, slowly, he motioned to the booth. She followed him back to it. They sat, again, across from each other, like strangers who knew too much and too little all at once. "You said, someone saved you once," Sophie began. "Is that why you do it? Jump into fires, then disappear?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then he said, "I don't save people. I fix mistakes." "What mistake was I?" she asked, almost whispering. "You weren't," he said quickly. "You were, just in the wrong place." She leaned forward. "Then tell me your name." "Just that." He hesitated. "Elias." She blinked. "So it is your name?" "No," he said. "It was once." "Why are you hiding?" she asked. He looked away. "Because not all heroes are innocent." Sophie stared at him. "What did you do?" He stood abruptly. "Don't follow me again." Then he left. This time she didn't call after him. She just sat there, cold and confused. Not all heroes are innocent. What was he hiding? The file that shouldn't exist. Sophie didn't go home that night. Instead, she sat in the park across from the bar, staring at the building. Her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Not all heroes are innocent. It was once my name. I fix mistakes. What mistake? What was he running from? Why only fires? And why had he saved her? By morning, she had decided. She couldn't stop now. She had to find out who Elias really was, even if he didn't want her to. The next day, Sophie visited the city archives. She had remembered the news article from 2 years ago about the man saving a child from a burning car. The location was less than an hour away. If the man in that story really was Elias, there might be more records. She started digging. At first, there was nothing. No police file. No public records. Then, an elderly archivist, noticing her frustration, asked if she needed help. Sophie hesitated, then decided to trust him. Looking for information about a fire that happened 2 years ago. A child was rescued. The man left before the fire trucks arrived. The man nodded slowly. I remember that. Strange case. No one ever claimed responsibility. He tapped his fingers on the desk thoughtfully. You might want to check the local fire department reports. They keep private logs too. Not everything goes public. Sophie thanked him and headed to the fire department in that district. At first, the receptionist brushed her off. We don't release internal reports to the public, she said. But Sophie didn't give up. I was in a fire recently, Sophie said, her voice shaking slightly. A man saved me and disappeared. I believe he might have been involved in that rescue too. I'm just trying to find out who he is. Please. The receptionist softened. After a long pause, she nodded and disappeared into a back room. 10 minutes later, she returned with a thin folder. You didn't get this from me, she said, sliding it across the counter. Sophie opened it with trembling fingers. There, tucked between 2 pages, was a name, Elias Carter, age 33, former firefighter, suspended pending investigation. Sophie's eyes widened. He wasn't just some mysterious stranger. He was a firefighter, or had been. But why was he suspended? She flipped further. At the bottom of the report was something chilling. Incident, unauthorized entry into burning building. Ignored protocol. Caused secondary structural collapse. 1 civilian injured. Department holds him partially responsible. There was no photo, no address. Just one final note, scribbled in red ink. Left town. Location unknown. Sophie sat in her car outside the fire station for nearly an hour, trying to breathe. He had been a firefighter. He had saved people. But he had also broken rules, and someone got hurt. Was that why he disappeared? Was that the mistake he had spoken of? And yet, he still saved her. And that child in the car crash. Whatever happened, he didn't stop saving people. That didn't sound like someone running from guilt. That sounded like someone trying to make up for it. Back at her cousin's apartment, Sophie started digging deeper into Elias Carter. She found an old article from 5 years ago. Firefighter Elias Carter receives Medal of Valor for rescuing 3 children from burning school bus. In the photo, she finally saw him, younger, clean-shaven, proud smile. It was definitely him. He had been a hero once, but something had gone wrong. She needed more. She drove to the address. Listed in that old article, an apartment building in a quiet part of town. The place looked abandoned now. Peeling paint, cracked, windows, weeds growing through the pavement. Still, she knocked on the door of the nearby unit. An older woman opened. Sophie introduced herself and asked about Elias. The woman frowned thoughtfully. Carter, yes, lived here some years back. Quiet man, kind, kept to himself. Do you know why he left? Sophie asked. The woman hesitated. There was an incident. Someone came looking for him, yelled at him in the parking lot, accused him of something. Next morning, he was gone. Accused him of what? The woman shook her head. Didn't hear much. Just words like you left him, and my brother's dead. She paused. Elias never raised his voice. Just listened, then walked away. Sophie's heart sank. Was that what this was about? A fire gone wrong. A man lost in the flames, and Elias blamed. She thanked the woman and walked back to her car. Her hands were shaking. This wasn't just a story of a man who disappeared. This was a man carrying guilt, pain maybe, even secrets no one else knew. That night, she went back to the bar, booth 317. She sat, waited. This time, Elias didn't make her wait long. He sat across from her without a word. She didn't speak either, not right away. Then, quietly, she said, I found your file. His eyes flickered, but he didn't look away. You were a firefighter, she continued. You got suspended. Someone died. Elias exhaled slowly. I told you not to follow me. I needed to know, Sophie said. I needed to understand why you saved me, and then ran. I run, he said, voice heavy, because I'm not a hero anymore. You saved me, she whispered. He finally looked at her. And I'm glad you're alive, but I wasn't supposed to be there, just like before. Sophie leaned forward. Before, he didn't answer. Instead, he placed something on the table, a photograph. It was burned at the edges. In it, 2 young men stood in front of a fire truck, arms around each other, both smiling. One of them was Elias. The other wasn't him. He died, Elias said, voice raw, and I lived. That's the truth. Sophie looked at the photo, heart pounding. And I was the one who told him it was safe to go in. The death they tried to bury. Sophie stared at the burnt photograph in her hand. 2 young firefighters. One was Elias, back when his smile was easier, his eyes brighter. The other, the man standing beside him, was unfamiliar. But Elias had spoken his name only once. He died, and I lived. The weight of those words wouldn't leave her. There was grief behind them, but more than that, guilt. A heavy kind of guilt, like a wound that never closed. She needed to know more. Who was he? She asked softly, holding the photo. Elias leaned back in the booth, his fingers tapping restlessly on the table. The usually calm, almost cold man looked suddenly older. His name was Marcus Vance, he said finally. My best friend since training. We did everything together. Same shift, same engine. We even shared a rent place for 3 years. Sophie listened closely. He was fearless, Elias continued, too fearless. He'd rush into flames without blinking. But that night, I gave the all clear. I told him it was safe to go in. His voice cracked. It wasn't. Sophie swallowed hard. What happened? The structure collapsed, Elias whispered. He didn't make it out. There was silence between them. Just the quiet hum of the bar's lights and Elias's slow breathing. The department blamed me, he added. Maybe they were right. I was the senior man on duty. I called it. My voice sent him in. But you didn't light the fire, Sophie said gently. You didn't make the building collapse. No, Elias said, his jaw tightening. But what no one knew was, we had doubts about that building's safety for months. I'd reported it twice, ignored both times. Budget cuts, politics. That place was a death trap. Sophie sat up straighter, and no one did anything. They filed my reports under low priority. Then, when Marcus died, suddenly everyone needed someone to blame. So I walked away. Couldn't wear the uniform after that. Back at her cousin's that night, Sophie couldn't shake the story. It felt unfinished, so she did what she always did. Searched. She looked up Marcus Vance. There were tributes online, firefighter memorial websites, local articles, a few blurry photos of the funeral. But something in one article caught her eye. Family seeks answers after firefighter's death. She clicked. It was written only a month after the accident. The family of fallen firefighter Marcus Vance is demanding an independent investigation after allegations of ignored safety complaints at the abandoned textile factory where the collapse occurred. Sources suggest internal warnings may have been dismissed prior to the fire. Below that, a quote from Marcus's brother. We know someone tried to speak up before this happened. We want the truth. We won't stop looking. Sophie sat back so Elias hadn't been the only one trying to raise alarms, and Marcus's family had known something was off. But that was years ago. Why did it seem like the story just stopped? The next morning, Sophie found Marcus Vance's brother. That it took hours of searching. But she found a name and a business listing. Aaron Vance, auto mechanic, in a nearby town. She drove out there without telling anyone. The garage was small, quiet. A dog barked in the back. A man in his 40s with grease-stained hands wiped his forehead and looked up as she approached. You, Aaron Vance? She asked. Who's asking? He replied. My name's Sophie. I was saved in a fire by Elias Carter. Aaron's eyes darkened, his grip tightened on the wrench in his hand. He's still alive. Yes, Sophie said carefully. I'm not here to make trouble. I need to understand. He told me about Marcus. Aaron looked her up and down, then gestured toward a bench outside the garage. Sit, he said. Talk. They sat under the morning sun as engines rattled in the distance. I hated him for a long time, Aaron admitted. Blamed him for everything. but part of me knew it wasn't all on him. Did your family ever get answers? Sophie asked. Aaron laughed bitterly. You think the department was going to admit fault? That they ignored safety reports? Nah, they buried everything, told us it was an accident, then moved on. But you believed otherwise. I still do, Aaron said. There was something about that fire that never sat right. The reports were vague, timelines didn't match. My brother had told me 2 weeks before that he and Elias were worried about that building. Then poof, it's all gone. Sophie reached into her bag and handed him the scorched photograph. Aaron stared at it. Where'd you get this? From Elias. Last night. He looked down at the photo a long time before, saying, maybe he's trying to make things right in his own way. He is, Sophie said. He's saved people, quietly, without credit. Aaron nodded slowly. Then he added something Sophie didn't expect. You know, Marcus wasn't supposed to be on shift that night. Sophie blinked. What? He swapped with someone. Said Elias convinced him to take the shift. He owed him a favor. Sophie's heart dropped. Elias hadn't just been the one who gave the all-clear. He was the reason Marcus was there in the first place. That evening, Sophie met Elias at the bar again. She didn't speak right away. He looked at her and said, You talked to Aaron, didn't you? She nodded. Double quotes. Did he tell you I asked Marcus to work that night? Yes. Elias looked down. I was supposed to go on a date. First one in months. Marcus said he'd cover for me. I didn't think I didn't know. His voice broke. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. You're not the villain in this, Elias. You're human. You made a choice, a painful one. But you've been punishing yourself ever since. I thought, if I could save just one more person, it would make up for it. Sophie reached across the table and placed her hand on his. You saved me. The fire that was meant for her. Sophie thought she was done searching. She had finally uncovered the truth behind Elias's past. She had spoken to Marcus's brother, connected the final pieces. She had seen Elias as something more than a ghost. In the smoke he was a man shaped by loss, guilt, and an endless need to save others. He had saved her, and now, she believed, she could help save him. But Elias had other plans. After their last conversation at the bar, he vanished again. No booth 317. No motorcycle parked out back. No trace. She waited for 3 days, returning. Every evening nothing. It was like he'd disappeared into thin air. Until one night, something else found her. It started with a noise. Sophie was staying alone now, having moved into a small studio apartment, while her cousin was out of town. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where you could hear every car door, every creak of the stairs, every bird outside the window. So when she heard the soft click at the back door, around midnight, she knew it wasn't normal. She froze. Another sound, a soft creak, then the unmistakable hiss of something sparking. She moved slowly to the kitchen, and peeked out through the back door window. A dark figure was crouched near the wooden fence, holding something small and metal, a lighter, and beside him, a sloshed-out canister of something that smelled like gasoline. Sophie's breath caught. He wasn't just trespassing, he was setting a fire, and she was inside. Adrenaline kicked in. She backed away quickly and grabbed her phone. Her fingers shook as she dialed 911. Whispering, she told the dispatcher her address and that someone was trying to set fire to her apartment. But even before she could finish, she saw the flicker of orange light outside the window. The fence was already burning. She grabbed her jacket, shoved her phone in her pocket, and bolted out the front door, coughing as the smoke spread quickly through the wooden siding. The flames were hungry, racing up the walls like they knew their target. She made it to the sidewalk just in time to see the fire take hold of the kitchen window, and then, out of the dark he appeared. Not the arsonist, Elias, racing around the corner on his black motorcycle, skidding to a stop, helmet off before the bike stopped moving. He ran to her, his eyes scanning for injuries. You're okay? He asked, breathless. Sophie nodded, still shaking. How did you know? I followed the man who's been watching you, he said quickly. He's been near you for days. I was trying to get proof before I confronted him, but I was too late. Sophie's heart pounded. You think this was planned? I know it was. This wasn't random. This was targeted. The fire department arrived minutes later. The flames were already halfway through the apartment's frame. Elias stood back in the shadows, away from the flashing lights, while Sophie gave her statement to police. She didn't mention Elias. She didn't want to lose him again. But inside, she was panicking. Why would someone try to kill me? She asked him later, after the fire was out and the crowd had left. They were sitting in an alleyway, behind the same bar where they'd first spoken. Elias was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I think it was meant for me." Sophie frowned. "What?" He looked up. "The man I followed, he's not just some stranger. He used to be a firefighter, like me. We trained together years ago." Another firefighter. "He blamed me for Marcus's death," to Elias said bitterly, "but not the way Aaron did. This man Liam, he thought I should have died instead. I saw it in his face after the collapse." Sophie's voice shook. "So, he's been following you. He disappeared after I left the department. But now, somehow, he found me. Or maybe he found you. Maybe he thought taking you out would finally destroy me." Sophie swallowed hard. "So he tried to burn me alive?" "Yes," Elias said quietly, "like Marcus." For the first time since the fire, Sophie felt the weight of fear settle into her bones. This wasn't just about Elias's past anymore. It was about her life, her safety, and a man who thought fire could bring justice. "Did you see his face?" she asked. Elias nodded. "And I took his license plate." Sophie looked at him in disbelief. "You knew who he was, and you followed him anyway." "I'm not going to let you get hurt because of me," he said. "This ends now." She reached for his hand. Not alone. The next day, Sophie did something she never thought she'd do. She walked into the same fire department that once tried to bury Elias's story, with Elias by her side. They requested a meeting with the chief. When the chief saw Elias, his expression turned cold. "You shouldn't be here," he said flatly. But Sophie spoke first. She placed a photo on the desk, a printed screenshot of Liam's license plate, captured from a traffic camera Elias had used. "This man tried to set fire to my apartment," she said. "He was once a firefighter here. You will listen." The chief stared at the photo. Then Elias leaned in and spoke, voice low and steady. "I've been silent for too long, but this time, someone innocent was nearly killed. You're not protecting the department anymore. You're protecting a criminal." The final fire. The fire chief stared at the photo on his desk for a long moment. His jaw tightened. Sophie could almost see the tension behind his eyes. Years of pressure, silence, and decisions that couldn't be undone. "I can't open an investigation based on a photo," he finally said. "But you can start asking questions." Sophie shot back. "Liam was one of yours. He trained with Elias. He vanished after the fire that killed Marcus. And now someone tried to kill me, the same way Marcus died." Elias remained calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "You knew something was wrong back then. You let it slide. You buried the warnings. And now someone is using fire as revenge, and you're still turning away." The chief sighed. "You've always been reckless, Carter, but you weren't wrong about the building." His voice softened, reluctantly. "I'll contact internal affairs. I'll see what's still on file about Liam Quinn." "Thank you," Sophie said. But Elias didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the chief. "You owe Marcus more than that," he said. The chief looked down at his desk, then nodded silently. That night, Elias didn't disappear. He stayed with Sophie. They didn't talk much, just sat together on her cousin's porch. The same porch she had cried on days after the fire. The air felt heavy, full of everything they'd uncovered. There was still danger out there. Liam hadn't been found. No arrest, no closure, but something had shifted. For the first time in years, Elias wasn't running. The next afternoon, it all fell apart again. Sophie stepped outside to check her car, only to find her tires slashed, her window cracked, and on the windshield, a note scribbled in black marker. "He let Marcus die. Now you burn." Her knees nearly buckled. She called Elias immediately. He arrived within 15 minutes, breathless and angry. "He's getting desperate," Elias said. "We need to stop waiting." Sophie stared at him. "Then let's end it. On your terms." Elias looked at her, surprised. "You said he always shows up after fire," she added. "So give him what he's waiting for." That night, Elias returned to the one place he never thought he'd see again. The abandoned textile factory, the very building where Marcus had died. It had been closed off for years, boarded up, surrounded by weeds and silence. But the fire damage was still there. Charred beams, collapsed walls, rusted staircases. Sophie waited nearby in her car, phone ready, police on standby. Elias walked into the dark. He wasn't sure how Liam would know he was there. But he trusted one thing: Liam was watching him. Always had been. He'd feel Elias walking back into the fire, like history repeating itself. And he'd come. It didn't take long. From the corner of the building, Elias heard movement. Slow, careful. Then the flick of a lighter. He turned slowly. Liam stepped out from behind a broken column, flame in his hand, gas can in the other. "Well, look who finally decided to stop hiding," Liam said, voice low, bitter. Elias didn't move. "It's over. You don't get to say when it's over." Liam snapped. "You left him. Your call. Your failure. And they gave you a medal while he burned." "I didn't get a medal, Liam," Elias said. "I got silence. I got blame. You think I haven't punished myself every day since that night?" "Not enough," Liam said. He tossed the lighter toward a trail of gasoline on the floor. Flames burst to life. Elias ran toward him, fast. Liam swung the can, but Elias ducked and tackled him to the ground. The two men struggled, fists landing hard, the heat rising around them as the fire grew. In the car, Sophie saw the fire through the broken window. Her heart stopped. She called 911 and ran. Inside the building, the smoke was thick again. Memories slammed into Elias like waves. Marcus's laughter, his voice, the fire, the collapse. He gripped Liam's jacket tightly. "Don't you see?" Elias shouted. "Killing me won't bring him back. It won't fix anything." Liam coughed, eyes wide. The flames had already surrounded them. The structure creaked above. Then Elias heard her. "Sophie," she screamed. "Elias." He turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, coughing, waving a flashlight through the smoke. "Get out," she cried. Elias didn't hesitate. He dragged Liam up, half conscious now, and stumbled toward her. The roof above cracked. They were seconds away from collapse. Sophie reached out, and Elias shoved Liam toward her. She grabbed Liam and pulled him through the doorway, just as the ceiling crashed down behind them. But Elias didn't make it. The next hours blurred into one long nightmare. The firefighters arrived, pulled beams, hosed down walls. Sophie screamed at them to go faster. Liam, dazed and coughing, was taken into custody. And then, a miracle. One firefighter shouted from the rubble, "We've got someone. He's alive." Elias was pulled out, burnt and coughing, but breathing. Sophie collapsed to her knees in tears. He had survived the fire again, but this time, he hadn't run. 2 weeks later, the trial against Liam Quinn began. With the evidence, Elias and Sophie had gathered: the license plate, the threats, the witness statements. Liam was charged with attempted arson, attempted murder, and multiple counts of harassment. More people came forward. Other stories surfaced. Sophie had lit the spark. Now the fire of truth was spreading. Elias testified. Calm, honest, strong. He faced the department, faced Marcus's memory, and finally, he stopped blaming himself. 3 months later, Sophie stood at a quiet park, where a new plaque had been placed under a tree, in memory of Marcus Vance, a true hero. Elias stood beside her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked softly. "For saving me, not just from the fire, but from living a life never knowing the truth." He looked at her, his hand finding hers. "I think we saved each other." They stood in silence, letting the wind carry away the last ashes of the past. Final lesson. Sometimes, the fires we survive are not just made of flames. They're built from guilt, silence, and grief. But healing begins when we stop running, face the truth, and let someone stand beside us in the smoke.